Folks, the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset has been repealed. Earlier in the month of January of 2025, the Social Security Fairness Act was signed into law. And as a result, well, these two items have been repealed. So what the heck does that mean? That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to set the beginning framework with how are Social Security benefits calculated in the first place? Hey, if I get a $2,000 check from Social Security in retirement, how did they arrive at that? Seems like a random number. It's not random. Well, what's the calculation? So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about how the WEP and GPO impacted that number for those 3 million people that were impacted by it. So that's going to lead us to, okay, now that WEP and GPO for these 3 million people are completely gone, then what does that mean? Well, what it's going to mean is they're going to get more Social Security and a refund as well, going back to January 1st, 2024. So a lot of stuff to talk about. My name's Charlie Gipple, and I'm the owner of CG Financial Group. And remember, by the way, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up as well as a subscribe. So let's transition over to how is Social Security calculated to begin with. So what the Social Security Administration does is two primary steps. It's actually a lot of steps, but I broke it down into two. First and foremost, they figure out your average index monthly earnings. So they go back over your entire career and they have recorded what you earn year by year by year. At least it's subject to Social Security taxation. That's important. Subject to Social Security taxation, how much did you make year by year by year? Where that 6.2% Social Security tax is applied to, unless you're also the employer. For me, I'm an employee and an employer, so I contribute 12.4%, right? But I digress there. So they plot out all these numbers, but then what they do is they move them ahead based off of, let's say 2025, based off 2025's numbers, and that's an oversimplification, but they move them ahead in today's dollar amounts because what you made in 1980 is not the same. That's not the same number as what that same, say, $20,000 would be today, right? So maybe they move that 20 grand ahead to, it's 60 grand in 2025's numbers, right? So now they have all these numbers. Then what do they do with all those numbers? They pick the best 35 years of those indexed earnings numbers. They add those 35 years up, the best 35 years up, and they divide by 420. Why do they divide by 420? Seems random. Well, because there are 420 months in 35 years. So we want to find the average monthly number, not the yearly number. So we divide by 420. That gets us our AIM, our average index monthly earnings. Effectively what that number is, hey, based off today's numbers over your best 35 years, you averaged around this number. The assumption we're going to use is big. It's a round number. I wanted to make it big for a couple reasons. One, it's a round number, but two, it shows what happens if you max out the next step here. So our example is, let's say that you made $10,000 of average index monthly earnings, which again, I mean, that's a lot more than the average person. That's 120 G's a year, right? Beyond the average, but that'll suit our purpose here in giving you an understanding of how the Social Security Administration does that. Okay, so does that mean you get a $10,000 check? No, that's not the final step to calculating your Social Security, because what the administration does is they then apply bend points to that $10,000. In other words, the people that have very little AIM should have a larger percentage of their AIM in the form of a Social Security check than somebody making, say, $10,000 a year. Those rich people are just, yeah, they're not good, right? Those wealthy people, those dang wealthy, I'm being facetious here, but that is kind of the concept here, that those that have been less fortunate will get a higher percentage of their pre-retirement income here. So here's what the government does is they take that $10,000 and they apply bend points, weightings basically for each sliver of the Social Security. So for instance, the first $1,200 and some dollars, it's multiplied by 90%. That's the first $1,200 of your $10,000. By the way, these are 2025's numbers. The bend point thresholds change year by year. So you multiply 90% by 1226, you have $1,103. The second bin point is this. So you see, the more that you have made over your career, the less the weighting is. The second bin point is that, $6,000 or so that is between 1226 and 7391. That's multiplied by 32%, which comes out to almost $2,000. Now we still have some money left because our aim was 10,000. So everything above 7391, which would be what, $2,600 or so, $2,700. Boom. You multiply that by 15%, and you have $391. So then what we do is this. We add them all up. So those three numbers there, 1103, 1972, and 391, add them up. That is the Social Security amount that this person would get if they filed at their full retirement age. If they filed early, that 3467 is going to be, it's going to be penalized, right? You can file as early as 62 unless you're a widow or a widower, then it's age 60. If you delay until age 70, it's going to be larger than 3467. But this person that had $10,000 in AIM after applying these bin points, it is $3,467. Now, what is in the crosshairs as far, or what has been in the crosshairs as far as a windfall elimination provision? It's that first bin point, because remember, the folks that haven't made a lot of money over their career, who we want to protect, right? Social Security was designed to prevent against impoverishment. It's not a retirement plan. It was designed to prevent impoverishment, I should say. So let's say a person only made $1,000 in AIM over their career. Then Social Security is going to replace 90% of what they made in their pre-retirement years, right? Conversely, this person that has had a pretty darn good career, $10,000 AIM, this person is only going to get 34.67% in Social Security relative to what he or she made in pre-retirement. So here is what the windfall elimination provision has said. It has said this. Okay, so the people that have this big fat pension plan from their state or local government, they can appear to be poor, so to speak, when it comes to what is on their Social Security statement and those earnings that they've had over their lifetime. Let's go back to this. They can appear to be on the low end, which means, and by the way, the reason they would appear to be on the low end of AIM is because they have a ton of non-covered earnings, because that state or local government that's now providing them with a big fat pension plan did not contribute to the Social Security system. The employee, when they were employed by that employer, did not contribute to the Social Security system. Therefore, these numbers look really low. And what's happening then is, even though this person is getting a big fat pension plan, they are also being weighted at least pretty heavily like they are a person that hasn't made a ton of money. So, and I hope that makes sense. You can think about it. You can let it kind of simmer a little bit, but effectively that person is getting the benefit of that first 90% bin point, just like somebody who only made $1,000 in AIM over their lifetime. So the government at one point in time, I want to say back in the 1980s, said, that's not fair. What we need to do for these folks that are getting big fat pension plans, but did not contribute to the Social Security system, which means that they're that they're participating in this 90% bin point, we need to adjust that bin point for these folks. So it is this bottom bin point that is in the crosshairs when it comes to the windfall elimination provision. So here's what the windfall elimination provision is. Then I'm going to provide you an example here of a WEP breakdown. This provision impacts workers who are receiving pension income from a job that he or she had, whereas that state or local government employer did not pay into the Social Security system, as well as they did not withhold taxes from the employee's check to pay into the Social Security system. This provision can reduce the first 90% bin point down to as low as 40% if the worker did not have at least 30 years of substantial earnings. So remember that Social Security statement that you and I get. Well, we have to go online unless we're age 60. If you're over 60, you get that statement every year. So on that Social Security statement, if your Social Security numbers here, if you're a part of those state and local government pension plans, right, that I'm talking about, if you did not have at least 30 years where your actual numbers exceeded these numbers, which is considered substantial earnings, then here is what the government says. The government basically says, hey, if you don't have substantial earnings that have given us a substantial amount of Social Security taxation for at least a 30-year period of time, then what happens? Well, first of all, if you have it for 30 years, whether you have one of those pension plans or not, you're good to go. You're still 90% at that bin point. But let's take an example and say Bill has only 20 years or less on his Social Security statement to where his earnings pass these substantial earnings numbers for each respective year here. He only had 20 years or less. But yet he's getting this big fat pension plan over here. It seems kind of unfair that Bill is going to have this wonderful windfall, as they call it. Well, again, the government addressed this at one point in time and launched this windfall elimination provision that says that Bill with 20 years or less, his first bin point is only 40%. So what does that mean? Going back to our example here, our $10,000 AIM, this person, this non-covered pension plan is providing this person $1,500 per month. What does that mean? It means the first $1,103, the same as or the first $1,226 rather, is not having a weighting of 90%. No, it's 40%. That is the major difference with a windfall elimination provision. The second tier there, it's the same. It's 32%. The third tier here is 15%. It's a different scenario when you add all of them together. It's no longer $3,467. What is it? It is about a $600 reduction for these particular folks. The windfall elimination provision, this reduction here, the $600 reduction as of the beginning of January 2025, it is no longer, which means that this person, and there's a lot of lack of clarity so far, but more than likely, I would bet money on it that, well, this person, common sense will tell me that this person is going to start getting their $3,467. So they get a nice Social Security bump. In addition to that, they're going to get a refund check. And that refund check will go back to the beginning of 2024. So if you do the math, well, $600 a month over 12 months, that's what? Are they going to get like a $7,200 check? That's what I'd be willing to bet. That's the windfall elimination provision right there. Now, what is the government pension offset? This impacts the spousal benefits. Now, you and I both know probably that a spousal benefit is this. Say if I'm getting $4,000 a month because my earnings were good, my wife hasn't earned really anything because she stayed at home with the kids or whatever, the government says that she would get 50% of mine. The greater of her earnings record or 50% of mine, right? So if I'm getting $4,000 a month, then her spousal benefit would be $2,000 a month. That is very much in a nutshell, very much a nutshell, a quick nutshell, how spousal benefits work. The government pension offset applies to that spousal benefit, whereas that spouse, my wife in this example, would be one of those government employees, working at one point in time for a non-covered government agency, state, local, whatever. And again, it only applies to her spousal benefits here. It's pretty simple, straightforward. Let's say her spousal benefit is $1,200. And let's say she's getting a pension plan of $600 a month from, example, Colorado Public Employees Retirement Association. Here's the way the GPO calculation works. They just take 2/3 of the pension that she's getting. They say, we will reduce your Social Security by 2/3 of what the pension is. So if her pension is $600 a month, 2/3 of that, they will reduce her Social Security by $400. From a spousal benefit standpoint, this only applies when it comes to the spousal benefits there. And that's what the government pension offset is. This is going away as well, which means she will now get a spousal benefit that is $400 higher than what she would have that was subject to the government pension offset. One thing I forgot to mention here, and as you can see here, her $1,200 spousal benefit goes to $800 because of that $400 reduction. Something that I forgot to mention here is this, is that $1,500 a month pension on the windfall elimination provision. If if you forgot that for a second, but if we went down here and if for some reason the windfall elimination provision resulted in, say, a $1,000 a month decrease, well, what the government has said with the windfall elimination provision is, no, it actually cannot exceed 50% of what that non-covered pension plan is. So technically, if that were the case, it would just be capped out at a reduction of $750 a month. But in my real example here, we didn't get to $750. It was only a $600 reduction. But just know that 50% of what the pension plan is what the maximum WEP reduction was. But in a nutshell, folks, these are going away, which means these folks subject to GPO and WEP previously are going to get some nice raises. Again, remember to like this video if you like it. Remember to subscribe. A lot of stuff, but I hope you enjoyed it.